Thanks for tuning in to the Urban School Podcast. I'm back with more WNBA news, talking about an issue that I just realized, during this opening week of the WNBA season, that Kennedy Carter isn't on a team. So when I was looking around, I was like, wait a minute, where is Kennedy Carter? She did such a fantastic job for Chicago Sky, who didn't make the playoffs, but it wasn't by her doing. They inserted her into the starting lineup pretty late. They were making adjustments. They were a very young team with pretty much two starters that were rookies, and she was that leadership presence that they need. She gave them toughness or an identity, so to speak, but she wasn't on a team. But, after seeing that they didn't pick up her contract or extend her, nobody else in the league picked her up. And she's playing for the Wuhan Xinfang, which is, crazy. She's probably making more money doing that than WNBA anyway, but this is just a topic that I wanted to explore and figure out more about. So, just doing a little bit of background on Kennedy Carter. She was drafted with the 4th overall pick in the first round in the 2020 draft by the Atlanta Dream. Now, with the Dream, she had the tough time and she ended up, they ended up moving on from her, and the same thing with the LA Sparks. But that led me to believe, was she blackballed this time from the league? Because with her talent and ability, she was easily the top scorer on the Chicago Sky last year. She was averaging 18 points. The next person was 14 points, was Angel Reese, which she missed, I guess you can say a substantial amount of time because she missed 5 games plus, especially in a 40-game season. That's about an eighth of the way. So she still have the talent. She hasn't diminished there. She has a defensive intensity. I've always called her the Allen Iverson, the female version of Allen Iverson in the WNBA. That's her comp for me. But they didn't extend her contract. So what events could have led to that? Because we didn't hear about any issues behind the scene with the Chicago Sky, and I'm pretty sure we would have heard about those if she had those with teammates or with coaching or something like that. There hasn't been any reports that I've seen that indicate that. So what situation could have happened for her to be not on a team this year? So I'll answer that for you. And it's not because they drafted or had a high draft pick, so they made her expendable. That's part of the equation, because they picked up Haley Van Lith, who really didn't play yesterday, in the loss that they just had, Chicago Sky just had. She didn't get into end of the game. She did get her first points, but nevertheless, I don't think that's a part of the issue. I think it's a part of the equation, but it wasn't a part of the issue. So on June 1st, 2024, there was an issue. The Chicago Sky played the Indiana Fever, a very heated rivalry, which, they just played yesterday. And, well, actually Saturday they played, and there were issues between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, which I'll get into in another segment. But there were an issue between Caitlin Clark and Kennedy Carter. Kennedy Carter hard fouled Caitlin Clark, which was initially called a regular foul. But after, they took it to the review, it became a flagrant 1. So I think this was the last straw from the league, especially when you touch the golden child. So if you would have did this to Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, or if you did this to LeBron James, even, to a degree, or Michael Jordan back in the day, you're going to have a very tough time getting another job. So she already had issues on 2 previous teams, but these issues was within the team and not other players or the star that they had, because they haven't had a star like Caitlin Clark really up until this point, just because of the media and things like that, a lot of different factors. But when Kennedy Carter did this move, it was pretty much like signing her own release papers, pretty much, so to speak, because we know that these leagues, not so much of the WNBA that we know about, but specifically the NFL, they collude. So once one team is done with you and they have such a big issue with you, other teams are collude and do so in the same fashion, especially when you're not, when you have some expendability to you. So a player like LeBron, they can't do that to him because he's so talented. Some teams are going to take a flyer on him. Uh, players like Michael Jordan could have got with it, got away with it back in the day. Of course, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, those type players. But when you're not that elite, and you're just a good to very good player, they can see you as expendable and they can collude and get you from other teams. So a player averaging, 17, 18 points a game in the WNBA is probably equivalent to 25 to 30 points in the NBA. So when you have that kind of productivity, you should be able to find another team, especially with the amount of offense you can generate. You're a defensive presence as well. So you have both sides, both assets that the game needs. The only ways that you could be assets is offense and defense, of course, in basketball. And she had that ability, but that questions to lead that that the league had to collude against her, or maybe somebody was fed up somewhere and they made the decision, hey, we're not going to bring her back. We have to protect our investment, and our investment is Caitlin Clark, so she could be seen as a threat to her. Even players that, even though a lot of players had problems with Caitlin Clark, because and I'll get into this a little bit later, but she's seen as that golden child that does no harm, and she's completely innocent in everything. And I'll kind of talk about where that is kind of flawed. Um, but the only way to, hold your power is by playing the game. And I'm not meaning playing the basketball game, but playing your cards. So, if you have to fake it until you make it, you just have to do that. But unfortunately, talent doesn't always save you from being blackballed. Um, Even if you have talent, i.e., Luka Doncic, the league will find a way to make you expendable and reward that team for making you expendable, i.e., the Dallas Mavericks getting the first overall pick this year after trading Luka away, which it just spells conspiracy to most people. But just staying on the WNBA, um, when you're in that proletariat position, to appease the bourgeoisie, you must play the game as you're dealt and fake it until you make it. But hopefully Kennedy Carter will find some peace and solace in where she's playing now, and she will find better opportunities, because it just seemed like she was blackballed from the league. But as always, until next time, I'll see you next time.